almost like the veil of the emperor's clothes, and I think that resonates pretty well. I'm very deep in data analysis. I conducted 8 phenomenological interviews over an hour each, and I for my study, I'm looking at perceptions of white racial consciousness, white racial privilege amongst faculty in higher ed, and I've successfully coded all over 8 hours worth. I've organized them into groups. Themes are emerging, and it's big. So to kind of answer your question, Tony, like, hey, share whatever you want. I think where I'm most likely to, or not likely, most what I think is most relevant for me right now in this conversation is say it's big, it's heavy, it's there's a lot to it. I've had to step back a few times and just to clear my head from the organization on my mind mapping organization, my concept maps, and shifting and moving them. And I feel like that's helped me gain some clarity. So moments of stepping away allow some clarity in it. I'm very much seeing where this is where it's heading in the future. So Tony, as you said, the gate to doors beyond our degrees right now, either we're working toward. I'm seeing how this work could shape into different projects, literary projects, workshop projects, not depending on what I find, but already based on what I found, like kind of those emerging themes. And I think that's pretty exciting. I think that's it's, and I'm not trying to get too far ahead. I'm trying to, at the same time, break it down, and then with the reminder that I have in my mind, in my head, is get it done, get it finished. So I think this ebb and flow of push forward, gain organizational clarity, step back, gain clarity, think of the future, but then think of what I need to get done now. That's where I'm at. I'm just really trying to pass on the waves. I don't sail, but you know what I mean? Like pass on the waves here and in the storm, and just kind of navigate the whole thing. I'm trying my hardest to focus more on the completed dissertation. But I struggle with the other parts that are so important and could shape up to be other elements in the future. And I look for guidance there with, I'm looking for guidance in maybe now, maybe just, in general, but that's where my questions are is how can I take what I have and produce the best work I can and get it done, and then have clarity on where those other pieces land, possibly. So I think that's where I'm at. And then I guess just lastly, if I had any hypotheses going into this, some were there, but only some. And I think that's the exciting part for me is I've gained a lot of insight into my research questions, and I think it's making it more valuable to me, because if I knew, if I'm just gaining a lot of confirmation and only some new information, I feel like, all right, that was nice, but so I think there's a lot of positivity in it, in swimming in the deep waters, I guess. There it is.
Great. Thanks for
Trying to
sharing
sleep
with
a
us.
lot because there's a lack of that.
Thanks for sharing. Let's keep your topic in mind here, because maybe folks have questions or suggestions here. So you are dealing with, you're trying to generate a theory in many ways around what some academics call white consciousness in the
Yes,
academy.
yes.
All right. What is that like? What sort of biases it produces or it is embedded with? What sort of ethical attempts it makes to make things fair, or what sort of crises is it facing? Or these questions are probably embedded in the interviews you have done, and then you're
Mhm.
making observations. Then, of course, you're using your intellect and trying to come up with a theory around it. So interesting stuff, because this kind of work gets done, but from where I stand, my vested interest in reading these kinds of things, they're not doing a very good job at it. So, David, you're going to be our Jesus Christ on this one.
I'm swimming
Okay.
swimming upstream, as they say. And I've read that many times in the in literature and amongst other scholars doing this work. It's swimming upstream, um, with yeah, just
Yeah,
the onslaught of
yeah.
forces going against us,
And you so you're going against the current. You're like a salmon.
with bears trying to
Yeah.
get me out of the water as well. So
All right. Be a salmon. Don't be a trout. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Marissa Chavez, give us what you got.
Good morning. Happy Sunday. I'm
Happy Sunday.
tired. I was at the beach all day yesterday. So then this morning I was like, okay,
Rough life.
exhausted,
Rough life.
but woe's me. I'm doing okay. This is my first week on summer break. I'm a teacher, so the year is finished, and now I can really focus on my dissertation, which is great. I know I've been feeling a lot of pressure, especially with the residency coming up and feeling like, oh, am I going to be able to graduate or like, go participate in the commencement? But then talking to my dissertation chair, we realized we just have to wait until, the following one. And that took off a lot of pressure. So now I was like, wow, okay, let's just focus on what I need to get finished. Right now, I turned in or submitted my proposal again to Dr. Gonzalez. He's a part of my community, my dissertation committee. So I already had Gary look at it, Dr. Jackson, and now one more. So then we can move on. And also, I reached out to some of the teachers. Oh, let me let you know what I'm doing. My dissertation's on collaboration between general ed and special education, and the lack of there. Um, my research questions are basically trying to figure out what the current status of collaboration at the research site, what strategies are evident, and then what strategies are ineffective. So then how we can fix that and move forward so we can in order have a great collaboration between our two school communities. So then in turn, we can really help our kids in special education be able to build that bridge between that. I notice, look, I teach special education right now. I notice a lot of my kids kind of struggle because they end up being kind of ostracized or kind of put to the back, like, oh, you can't work on this in the general education classroom because you're not giving, they're not just given the chance to be able to prove themselves. And so I feel like that's just a lack of having those differentiation strategies by the teachers. And yeah, so that's what I would like to do. But yes, so far I collected some emails from my teachers that are interested in the research for next fall. And yeah, so I'm just awaiting my proposal to come back. That's
Okay.
where I'm at currently.
Okay. I have a question.
Yes, definitely.
When Marissa Chavez wakes up in the morning, what is she thinking?
Well, now that I'm on summer break, I'm thinking like, wow, what am I going to do today? But usually I'm thinking about, okay, in the morning, especially with work, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do with the kids? Or what do I need to do? Who do I need to connect with? How am I going to teach these lessons? That's usually what my mind is going and going and going. Like I said, I teach special education, but mainly social emotional learning. That's what I teach. So I give a lot of hugs. We talk about emotions a lot. But now it's different. It's summer break, summer brain, get organized. Don't slack off, don't fall
Mhm.
behind, because it's kind of hard when you don't have that structure in place. So that's kind of where I'm at.
You think about all that stuff in just one morning?
I
Like,
do. My mind just goes, 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 goes.
uh,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, maybe some Zen practices in the morning could help.
Oh, I think that would be nice, right? Some mindfulness. I should practice what I teach. Mm.
Yeah, try to empty that mind as much as possible and just wake up in the morning like, hey, you drink coffee?
I don't, because it makes me anxious.
Okay. You drink a hot beverage in the morning?
No, but I heard that if you have like hot water, like if you drink hot water, you're supposed to wake up your system a little bit before going into like warm, cold water. So I drink room temperature. So does that work?
Okay, I'll accept that, right?
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Patient approved, yeah.
Okay, thank you
Right.
so much,
Well,
Tony.
maybe first thing in the morning you'll say, well, I'm about to have my room temperature water. Isn't that great? And
Hmm.
and look, I look out the window. I don't see any airplanes coming over to drop a bomb on my head. So life is
That's a
good.
good thing. That's definitely a good thing because I live right by the water and I live by a base too. So I was just like, oh, like this is not the best spot to live.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Very
yeah.
good.
So
Thank you for sharing.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sorry, you were saying something else and I cut you off.
No, I was just thinking like, so you're saying mainly be present, be in the moment, look outside, enjoy the summer. Is that what you're saying?
Is that what I'm saying?
I don't know. That's what
I'm
I
just saying what I'm saying, you know.
got from it.
Yeah, of course, be present, right? Here's the thing that I often preach. I get a lot of mileage out of this too, and to the annoyance of my wife sometimes. Uh, Time is a human, I was going to say man-made. Oh my God, he said man, human-made construct. Uh, I think everybody in the scientific community also agrees. We invented time, the notion of time, to try to figure out how to organize our lives and deal with our anxieties of existence and all that. But what if we were to construct it in a different way? Because it's a question of language, and Bergson did a whole book on this stuff. Uh, what if we were to see time as a non-entity in many ways, looking at the past, the present, and the future, all into one thing, one entity, and not call it time, just call it the duration of existence, which can be circular, of course, right?
Mhm.
What are our dreams about? The dreams are always circular, always, even the anxiety, written dreams. If you do some dream studies, you might come to this conclusion, or you may disagree with me. That's okay. Um, if we did that, or we tried to do that, right? I think a lot of these anxieties about accomplishments and checking the list and doing things and all that will just simply go away. And that may be the end of the need for SEL anyway. So that may not work out. Yeah.
I think it would be great if they actually implement it in every classroom because every child needs it. Because I feel like a lot of those conversations don't necessarily happen. Um, but yeah.
Well, our education system is not designed to teach, philosophical thinking to kids. Kids are already thinking philosophical terms, but by the time they reach the fourth grade, fifth grade, it's been just kind of like buried in their consciousnesses. Right? Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't be daydreaming. What are you doing? Learn this stuff. Be on time. Sit down. Pull your skirt down. That kind of stuff. Right? It's just crazy, crazy stuff. Thank you so much. And I'm going to call on Bridget, are you in a cabin? Are you camping? Are we jealous of you now? What's going on?
I don't know. I live here, so you could be jealous of me if you want to be,
I
right?
am. Look at that. You got those
Yeah.
snowshoes and things on the
Yeah.
wall.
Oh, yeah. I snowshoe. Those just happen to be decorations. Yeah. Marissa, I have to say, I felt your energy. I'm also a teacher, and there is something to be said about this constriction of time in a school year where you have so much to accomplish with students and you're multitasking and you care so much and you put all this effort in, and it just feels like a race into the end of the year. And then summer comes, and like you, I was taking a nap right before I got on this because I finished teaching curriculum camp this week, and I was exhausted. So yeah, and there is this practice of meditation and understanding that you can only do so much and balancing your work and play. But the reality the culture in a school doesn't always support that, and I totally get it because it just happens. And now I'm on summer vacation, and I feel like I have endless time. And come August 1st, I'll be like, my life is ending. And so
I agree with you.
so
Thank you, Bridget.
that continues whether we like it or not, because we can fill up our time no matter what. And also we can just sit and appreciate. And I don't know about you, but I plan on sitting in my hammock a couple days and taking in the moment. But so I hear what you're saying too, Tony, that like if we could only just make this part of our life and change the way we operate instead of this rat race during the school year, we'd all be happy and our kids wouldn't be so stressed because we wouldn't be stressed, right? Like it's contagious. Um, so anyway, Marissa, I found your topic also really interesting about what you were saying with special ed students not having the same opportunities. And I'm working on mathematical equity and having all students have an opportunity to engage in mathematics and deep problem solving. And I have in my research also discovered that in my lit review research, I haven't done my actual research yet, but I have discovered that through my reading that it's a common practice and that we don't give all students the same access. We don't ask the same kinds of questions. We don't have the same rigorous material for everyone. And we don't provide multiple opportunities and the same high expectations of all students. And so my research question is about how can I implement? I'm doing a participatory action research. And so I'm going to be working with a few teachers in my school, implementing a Plan, Do, Study Act, so which is like part of my job. I'm an academic support teacher. I came out of the classroom a couple years ago. And basically, I do this already. So I'm just going to be doing my job more intentional, looking at implementing a mathematical mindset framework, which is about all students have access to deep content with an on-ramp so that no matter what your ability is, you can access it and move towards more difficult math problem solving. And yeah, and basically I just want to see if implementing this in classrooms has an impact on the testing, the academic testing that we do. Part of my job is analyzing test scores and collecting data and assessing students. And I'm constantly interviewing students every day on their math. And it's so fascinating to me to hear the same misconceptions have come up, the same dilemmas, and also then be in a meeting where a teacher says, well, they can't do it, they're the low math student. And I'm like, oh, it's not that. Actually, they have amazing thinking. They just missed an opportunity to access the math because we believe that they're low math thinking student. So it's more about changing our mindset around who can access mathematics, and everybody can. That's the truth. Everybody can access it. Everybody can think, because mathematics is everywhere around us in every minute of our day. So it's kind of specific. It's not where I started on this journey, but anyway, I appreciated hearing your research is very much related to mine. And I'm in the similar boat. I've turned in drafts of my proposal to the virtual writing center. I just finished the last one and finished editing. I've turned in a number of my drafts to my chair, Gary. I have a similar committee that you do too. And one of my committee members is out of town because she's a local person to me in early education. But Emiliano and Gary are also on my committee and are going to be reading my proposal in the next, well, today I'm submitting it. So, and then I'll be on that journey coming up. So, and then I'm hoping to do my research through the school year next year. So, yeah, and it'll be fun. And it's been really interesting. My favorite part has been the literature review. Just the reading and getting to read what I want to read and uncovering all these the research around math has been fun. So yeah.
I have a question for you, Bridget.
Yeah.
Is math a discovery or an invention?
Well, actually, that's an interesting thing. I think it's a little of both, right? We are discovering patterns in the natural world constantly. Math exists whether we like it or not, but the invention of making sense of those patterns with symbolic notation is our invention. And that's the same in literacy too. Like we had to communicate. Math is just like a language. We had to communicate. We had a way of communicating, and then we took symbolic notation and put it into words and letters and writing, and now technology. And so I think it's a little bit of both. It exists in patterns in our natural world, and we make sense of those patterns by creating. Which is why it's amazing because, one of the earliest math skills we have is called subatizing. It's like being able to identify how many of something. And that's important for survival because if you saw 3 dots and there were 2 people, you're like thinking already or say it was 3 blueberries. You're thinking who's going to get the last blueberry? Am I going to split it? Or, so already we do math without even realizing it.
That's right.
So, yeah. Yeah. It's such a fascinating thing. And that's why it's accessible to everyone. My dog actually does math. And so and so it's accessible to everyone in some form. And we just have to think about how to use that mathematical thinking to get us to another place, right? Like, unfortunately, in a capitalistic society, we pay people lots of money to do math. And unfortunately, everybody probably could do math, but not everybody is going to get paid that much. So how can we make it more accessible so more people who don't have the privileged people aren't the only ones getting to that level? So, I mean, essentially, it's like, okay, let's take something that we all have the ability to engage in. And the other thing is that math is very much an artistic endeavor. And so that creativity is essential. And if we only have the numerical privileged way of thinking, then we're never going to get creative about solving world problems like the climate crisis, right?
Yeah. If you could only teach math to our people in Congress, right? Because it's crazy math what they use. You give
I
a
would agree.
proposal, right? You give them a proposal, say, well, look, let's have free college education. Let's have universal health care. They come back and go, well, we did the math. We don't have the money for that.
Right,
right. Then Zelensky flies over to Washington, says, I need money. I'm like, oh, okay. 27 million, 50 million, 100 billion, $75 billion. So far, it's been over $100 billion of aid that's gone over there. wait a minute, you had the money to give this person to, conduct war instead of giving money maybe to form a committee to form peace. Then you go back and go, okay, so you had the money. So I think you made a mistake in your mathematical calculations.
Mhm.
And then they come back and then they say, no, we have a large deficit. We need spending cuts, all this stuff.
Mhm.
So is mathematics the most honest form of discipline where you cannot lie in math because 2x plus 5 equals 10. You solve for x, you can't, what is 2x plus 5 equals 10, right? 10
Yeah.
minus 5 is 5, 5 divided by 2. So x is what, 2.5? Yeah, okay. So, but if you say x is 3.5 or x is 0 because we don't have the money, it doesn't make sense, right? So it's the most honest discipline.
Mm.
And so we conclude from that logic that our people in Congress are lying, right? And
Right.
yet people go to the voting booths and vote for these people.
Right.
Let's do the math on that. What
Mhm.
it doesn't calculate, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So if everybody learned mathematics early on and learned the, the justice of math, I
Mhm.
think we'd have a better society.
So
But
true.
again, I'm
Yeah.
going off. Yeah.
I see that David asked, how is creativity in mathematics stifled by power structures?
Yeah.
I we are taught a certain way to learn mathematics. And here's a study that I recently heard. I don't know if it was a podcast or what I was listening to, or if I read it, 'cause so much I've been reading. But this is an interesting thought. There was a research project where there was a problem to build a bridge with certain specs, and it was given to a kindergarten class, and it was given to a group of engineers. And the kindergarten class was able to build the bridge to specs way quicker and more accurately than the engineers because they have learned so specifically all the minutia and the language and how we have to be, the cultural norms. And the kindergartners are like, well, let's try this. And they listen to each other and try things and weren't afraid to fail. You see how like mathematics as a topic becomes like a barrier almost because of the way we teach it. That there's a structure and a way to learn it, and you have to follow that versus the exploration and creativity that you might have before you are taught math. So, and I think that's one example. There's probably lots more, but yeah.
Excellent. Excellent, yo. All right, so I'm seeing a question here from Ali, and so I wonder what this is all about.
It's only to you though.
Oh, it's only to me.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not like relative,
Okay.
so it's after.
Right. Yes. Yes, I do have a little bit of time, not too much, but a little bit of time.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you for clarifying that because I was going to go ahead and read your message. Yeah.
I know I saw that going that way and that's not good. Okay.
It's about the politics of the academy. Yes.
Yes.
Priya, are you here? She had to leave for a few minutes, she said. Okay, so we'll go to Kayla and then we'll come back to Priya. Hello, calling Kayla. Beep. No, okay. Tori. Hello. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Tori, are you driving? Did you say you were driving?
I was, but now I'm not. Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, awesome. Happy Sunday, everybody. So I just actually submitted my full dissertation to my chair for review. So that felt like a big and significant step. I would say about 9 days ago, I was where David was with analyzing and figuring out what goes in the dissertation now and what kind of goes in the next steps, things to look at. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, who's your chair again?
I'm Dr. Gonzalez.
Okay, and who's on leave for the summer, but he's doing this work.
Yes, he said he would read it in like the next 2 days or so and then pass it to the committee, hopefully. So
Okay, congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. So next on my screen is Nina.
Hi, Dr. Tony.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. Okay, so with regards to what's going on with me at this time, so my research focuses on overcoming the shame of poverty. So I am constructing an SPN, a scholarly personal narrative. What I am finding is that through my continued efforts of constructing my dissertation, that I am actually discovering that within this comprehensive body of work, that this overall project is actually myself coming to a self-reconciliation. And so that's been hard. And so, you know how you can, like you just asked a question earlier, Dr. Tony, to Marissa, what do you do when you wake up in the morning, or what do you think about? And for me, it's always been, what do I see? Who do I see in the mirror when I wake up in the morning, right? And so as my research is focusing on me overcoming the self-blame of poverty, in which I've blamed myself for many years, for the poverty that not only I experienced, but the poverty that my children experienced, because the poverty that I have experienced has been both generational and situational poverty. And so through learning and understanding about systemic and institutional racism, right, and how these functions causes poverty to continuously be a reproductive perpetuation that is reinforced, especially within the Black community. And so what I am learning is that in writing a scholarly personal narrative, it is not easy, because I am constantly ensuring to keep a balance of the voices, to keep a balance of my narrative along with the narrative of others. I've also been using my scholarly personal narrative, to really seek a deeper meaning. I remember the last course, the last Zoom course that you taught some weeks back, Dr. Tony, we talked about authenticity. And so that stuck with me. That's something, one thing about me, I don't care what I've been through in life. I always told myself that I was going to be real to myself. And so what I have been observing through my writing process is, what is the true meaning behind this dissertation? Why did I select this research topic? Why did I select my methodology, right? This is something, as you stated, we're putting out into the world. We are becoming the expert in. So it's like, I know that I have an expertise in speaking about the personal and individualized experiences of poverty, but now analyzing poverty no longer from a bottom up, but now from the top down, looking at poverty specifically from the lens of systemic and institutional racism and oppression, which is something I've never done before. And so I'm also writing from a space in which as I'm writing my personal narrative, I'm not writing from a space in which I'm saying, hey, okay, I've been through, this is my experiences, these are my personal experiences, and I have already achieved self-reconciliation, but rather what I am doing honestly and transparently is that as I am writing and constructing this scholarly personal narrative, that I am speaking from a space that I am working towards self-reconciliation because it's not achieved yet. So my dissertation is very meaningful to me, and I hope that it's able to translate to others who are also seeking self-reconciliation, what that process means. How do you begin it? How do you begin this process? How do you continuously engage in the work towards self-reconciliation? So that's what that's what I'm doing right now. And I am explaining, I'm using this conception, and as I am integrating it in both my chapter 1, as I am providing background, and then more specifically in my chapter 2, in delving into the literature. So that's what I'm working on at this time.
Okay, I've got a question. Undoubtedly, racism is embedded in our institutions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's take Antioch, for example. You know, Antioch is labeled as an anti-racist institution. Okay. But who are the leaders of Antioch? I'm talking about chancellor, you know, vice chancellor, provost, president, and then the connection to the other university, Otterbein. I saw a picture of the leadership. You know, they got together. They had all this talk about anti-racism and all that, but I didn't see any authenticity there. So, but then there's another aspect here to think about too.
Okay.
There are a lot of white people that also experience poverty. All right. To what extent is there a conversation between African Americans, Latin Americans, and other people of color who experience poverty or born into it, perhaps,
Right.
or they come in and out of poverty, and the dominant European-based Americans, right? So is there a conversation? So is your literature informing you about that? Are there groups? Are there books written about this? Because classism is something that doesn't really get discussed in like leadership programs. I mean, we've got Antioch as a program. It's the most successful PhD program in Antioch is the leadership program. And there are other schools that they hand out degrees in leadership, which I always find confusing. Right? Somebody learns to be a leader and gets a degree and then goes out and teaches the same kind of things that he or she learned to others to be a leader and all that. It's just very confusing. But is that discussed? So that's something, I don't know if you've reached that point where you're looking at these things, the patterns that between one sector of society, leadership and all that, then the ethnicity induced poverty and all that, and the extent to which that, because if there is solidarity between white people and who are poor, and Black people who are poor, and Latin Americans who are poor, and Asian Americans who are poor, Vietnamese diaspora, if you go and examine Vietnamese diaspora, you're going to find a shit ton of poverty. Right. I live in the Bay Area, so there's a Vietnamese shop where we go and buy produce and all that to support the local person. All that. But and I'm a little bit familiar with that community. So we have a lot of this going on, and the extent to which, you know, our hypercapitalism has created this massive chasm between the haves and the have-nots. And then there's this mythical middle class that is being created. What are we doing? Are we in conversation? Are we working towards building solidarity? Or every ethnicity thinking, well, I'm the victim, I'm working on my shit, and then you're the victim on that's a work on your shit. And if we do get together, that's pretty cool. If we don't, that's okay. That's the question. That's a research question to be looking at, because I think it's very important to see whether or not there's a possibility of building because solidarities are not given, they're built. Is a possibility to build solidarity. But that's a conversation you will have with your chair, right? Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. And I wrote that down. And also too, Dr. Tony, just real quickly, specifically for the lens of poverty, I've been looking at the lens of poverty. I've been looking at Black poverty, the Black poverty in South Los Angeles, as I have been researching that the poverty in South Los Angeles, which is an urban section of Los Angeles, that the Black poverty that exists within this community is deeply ingrained in discriminatory, institutional, systemic practices. So that's what I've been focusing right now. So I've been making a clear distinction so far between poverty and the Black poverty of South Los Angeles, as I've used my immediate community as my focal point. So I definitely wrote down what you stated, especially with regards to the patterns of poverty and looking at other ethnicities and the poverty that's faced. And I'm making a note of that right now, Dr. Tony. So thank you.
Of course, and I think a good conversation with Mally is important too, because she is put in the chat box. There's a course of study I did a few years, this is Mally, a few years back, called Bridges Out of Poverty, that combines all of that discussion, and that's fabulous.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
The conversation with Mally is gonna, I think, catapult you to the next level with your dissertation.
Oh, I would really appreciate that. And I'm going to send you my information right now, Mally, in the chat, okay?
She says, okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tony.
Thank you for sharing, Nina. I appreciate it. And thank you for taking my question.
Thank you.
Priya, you're back.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Tony.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Oh, Nina, your voice and your subject really tugged at my heartstrings. I'm working with animals and the most dispossessed. And unfortunately and strangely, my situation, my work is in all the most poverty-stricken places in India, in my city. And it's kind of overwhelming because it's the people who are the most dispossessed are the kindest to animals and to others. That's something that's, that's what's bringing me there. I've been struggling a bit in the last month and a half. And to just answer your question, Dr. Tony, about what do I do first thing in the morning? So I really look at the sensations of my body when I wake up. Exactly what am I feeling in the different parts of my body? Because I feel that's what's telling me how I'm going to react to the different things. So I'm constantly aware of what my body is actually chemically, biologically feeling. So it's not about my thoughts, but it's about my feeling. And it could have to do with my method, which is phenomenology. Anyways, in May, my work has been full. I've had a new hire. She's an artist. So to be honest, this work is, the dissertation work is my life's work. So it's really hard to put into a dissertation. But through my artist, I'm trying to see how I can use, how I can teach her and my team everything I know so that we can use art as a means of education. work has been really full. I've been at grants and other things, but I thought I'd start writing my dissertation, at least chapter 2. And I'm not that erudite scholar. So I really, really struggled with it. Most of chapter 2 is about theory. It's all in the abstract, and there's no change making. And I really struggled with that. So I decided I'll sit down and transcribe, like David did, the many, many hours of interviews I've had with my team and with my founder. And this has opened up a whole world of anecdotes and experiences and events that I think I need to share more than the erudite scholarship. It's about, the stuff that I've seen through animal eyes, about my own motherhood, about poverty, about the dispossession. So I think I'm really trying to reorganize my work from that angle. I'm not going to attack the chapter 2. I'm just going to try to transcribe. And when I began that, I tried to look at software, but it's been really hard. I looked at something called otter.ai, and now it's all over my computer and I don't know how to get rid of it. And maybe that's why you saw it in the morning on screen. I'm so sorry about that. But what I'm getting from the interviews, I've transcribed about 4 to 5 hours now. And it's real gold. There's so much material people are saying without saying it. And I think that is really key to bring out. And I'm beginning to see that tornado analogy you gave is really, really, it's deep. Because I think grassroots work is everything. We simply, we cannot get information that's useful to dismantle our systems from the top. They are light, even though they appear looming and they know everything. But it's the people who are dispossessed. We work with former addicts, minority community, Muslims, people who have been formerly trafficked, the trans people, because they are the closest to the animals and the biodiversity loss that I'm concerned about. They seem to know what matters. They seem to know more about soil, about regeneration of soil. They seem to have a good idea about the survey of animals in the urban spaces. So I think that's really where I'm starting from. So I'm right now organizing the interviews, and I'm getting out, I'm trying to code for specific themes. So of course I'll get to a meta theory. And I think phenomenologically, it is, I think, my experiences with the most dispossessed on ground that'll probably bring out the most in this dissertation of mine. And my whole goal is there are so many people, so many of us at Antioch, so many of us who are worried about the state of the world, so many of us who are concerned about, even if we are middle class, where to invest, how to be responsible parents, how to make our children feel more secure. And I think I'm writing my dissertation for all these people who are looking to solve problems, but don't know where to start. So how do I give that little bit of information that can help them start? Yes, we are lucky, we are privileged. We are in the ivory tower. We have managed to get here. We are able to do a PhD, but I look at my team, they are full of muddied hands scholarship. They work with their hands and animals every day, and they learn so much. And I think I need to put stuff down that's less erudite maybe, and more real, because the majority of people are really in those classes. And as you said, class is something completely invisible. Nobody speaks about it. But I think class is the crux to caste differentiation, racism, everything, speciesism, all of it. classes, it's all about human supremacy. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm beginning to see the connections to everything. And Dr. Tony, one thing that flashed in my mind when you talked about time, I began to think we are really thinking poorly about time. Animals are our best teachers. The way they manage math, the way they are oriented, they are the best geographers, they are the best conservationists. Because I was thinking about our cells, a cell of ours contains everything. It contains the past in terms of our DNA, it comes from our ancestors. The cell is the present. It has the potential for the future. So if you look at time, it is actually everything wrapped. The past, present, and future is wrapped within us. We got to think of time slightly differently from making it into buckets and isolating it as, a subject or a dimension. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling all over the place, but I'm trying to just get this life's work put into some kind of wording that'll mean a lot to more people than just sit within academia and on the shelves. Anyways, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. There's a lot there, but I think we can all see the connections between race, class, and the cliche, of course, is race, class, gender, sexual orientation, DEI, and all the rest of it that we're always talking about, and so on. And of course, our language is changing about these things. And every time the word language comes up, I'm reminded of Wittgenstein, because he famously said, or maybe infamously for some people, my worldview is limited to my language. But so we change our language. That means that we've changed our thoughts, because thoughts happen and then we use language to express our thoughts. All right? It's not the other way around. Right? People say, well, last night I was dreaming in French, so I must be really fluent in French now. No. Yes, you may be fluent in French. You're dreaming, and you're expressing your dreams in your chosen language of French. And again, if you think about how we learn languages, not just like spoken languages like English, French, German, Spanish, blah, 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 but also the vocabulary that we use to communicate with one another about topics that are important to us. And we think that, given that we're moral agents, human beings, having a sense of morality, we think that it ought to be important for the rest of the world. But then we look at examples of people that just, simply don't have a moral compass whatsoever, and yet they're praised in situations of power, in platforms that give them power. And I know Priya and I differ on our opinions about Modi, the Prime Minister of India. He gets a lot of praise, but he also gets a lot of criticism. I'm not a big fan of his, given this approach towards Hindu nationalism and all that. But let's use some other examples. Somebody like Henry Kissinger. Do you guys know who Henry Kissinger was? He recently died at the age of 100. Right? He was given the Nobel Peace Prize for engineering realpolitik, where he engineered the perpetuation of the Vietnam War, which resulted in killing the death of millions of people. He engineered the coup in Chile, and he engineered many other things, installing, dictators in South America, Central America, and so on, as well as Central Asia and the Middle East and so forth. The man was responsible for genocide, yet he was given the Nobel Peace Prize. So go figure, right? Someday we might see somebody giving a peace prize to Benjamin Netanyahu, who is engineering a genocide of the Palestinians. And it's crazy, right? So if you change our language about power, I think we can get somewhere in that sense. So there's a lot there to talk about, but let's keep moving forward so folks will have a chance to talk, because it's already 1 hour has passed and we haven't even gone past the check-in period. But this really is the check-in, isn't it? Right? The meeting. I want this class to have meaning and not just be fluff, because it could easily be fluff. It could just be you pay the fee, do this fluff. You're already working with your dissertation committees and all that. So what's the point of being in a class that just sort of just checks on you? Am I the academic policeman here? So I want this to be, as Nina puts it, meaningful. So I can earn an honest buck, which isn't much, to be honest with you. It's pittance, but still is something, right? And you can actually feel like, well, I paid tuition for something, so I can have an opportunity to have a meaningful discussion with my colleagues. So I'm going to move over to Danny. Hello, Danny. The floor is yours.
Hello. I'm going to get my video on here. Hi, everyone. Some of you know, Tony knows, some of the other students here know, I am coming back from a semester of leave. A major event happened to me, medical health sort of thing, later in the late last year. And so right now I'm kind of living the life of trying to reawaken the drive and get back into the organization of where I have left things previously last fall, which has been a bigger challenge than I thought it was going to be. I am dealing with health things. I'm dealing with an extremely stressful time at work. So it's like the piling on of all the things. But that being said, I feel like I did cross a major hurdle in the last week, so I'm very excited. I started getting more interviews on my calendar and inadvertently opened too wide of a door and have more interviews than I had planned. But that's exciting. It's really exciting. And with the scheduling of each of these interviews, it also has reawakened the excitement around the work and what is coming. So that's kind of the broad strokes of where I'm at. The work itself, for those of you who might not know, my dissertation topic deals with using devised theater, which is unscripted. It's ultimately scripted, but it's theater that is created by the ensemble who is performing it, rather than using a pre-existing script. And that work being done in higher education, specifically the importance of it for students and instructors really, from historically and currently marginalized populations, and how it serves as a tool for exploring different facets of our personalities and our identities. So the other interesting kind of unique piece of my dissertation is it is also going to be largely expressed in the form of a podcast, part of my impulse to be able to share the work with as broad an audience as possible and to really take advantage of these changing media forms that we're living with. So the interviews are very essential and very key, and the podcast itself is a wonderful opportunity to really center the voices of the folks who I'm talking about in my research. Yeah, So that's kind of where I'm at. Another piece, and I think Dave, you in particular might appreciate this since we last spoke. When I opened the door to more interviews, somebody who is a key scholar in my field reached out and was like, yes, Danny, please include me somehow. So I'm really excited. He's an older scholar. He's in his 80s. The fact that he was excited to be on a podcast was surprising to me. But I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Oh, that's incredible. Yay. It's a big surprise when that happens because in my case, as we talked about, was like, I'm just gonna send this email and we'll see what happens. And then 10 minutes later, I got a response. I'm like, what? And yeah, amazing. So yay.
Congrats, Danny. Now, one of the problems that is with any interview is how do you get real, honest answers out of people? Because we are, as human beings, we have a tendency to construct narratives about our own lives, about the way we see the world, and then we tell those narratives over and over. Next thing you know, it becomes a reality for us. It becomes fact. That's why, institutional religions are still strong around the world. Islam, Abrahamic ones especially, right? Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and it's just full of mythologies, contradictions, and all that. There's lots of narratives there people build. So when you ask somebody like a question, and then you're probing and you're pushing that person, and the person is confronted with sometimes this cognitive dissonance, right? The trick is the prompt, right? Prompt engineering is something that I think we should have a seminar in our program, your program, called prompt engineering. And this is where AI can be very helpful and all that. We won't have time for me to give you like a formal lecture on AI, but maybe the next time we get together. How to prompt the person to give honest answers. And this is where good interviewers are successful, right? You hear about, oh, so-and-so is such a great interviewer. And then when you listen, like Bill Moyers was such a person. When you listen to the conversations, on the surface, you think, well, he didn't really say much, but he did say a lot, right? By asking the right questions and then pushing for that hidden truth. Yeah. So this is key with participatory work where you're actually dealing with human subjects, talking to humans and saying, tell me what you think of this. Tell me what you think of that. The biases kick in, the old narratives come in, and our memory is a funny thing, right? Memory is I was having this conversation with my wife about memory the other day because we're working on this conference on time, memory, and reality. Memories change. What you remember when you were a child, right, about an important event that happened, may be qualitatively different than what your parents remember. And your parents will say, no, this is not what happened. This is what happened. No, that's not what I remember. And what I remember is my reality. I'm going to stick with that. So it gets tricky. With theater and the arts is also the heuristic state of mind sets in too. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on, and the interpretations become fact for some people, all that. So it's a great topic of inquiry. Of course, we're working together, so it'll be cool. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that.
Dr. Kashani, can I ask a kind of a question or a comment about that?
Question slash comment, yeah.
So a lot of my work, like job work, is investigative interviews, but the way we conduct them is that we don't call first so that we can get the person at their most authentic being or space, no time to prepare the narrative, right, or the story, just there in their full authenticity. And the problem is we can't do that in the academy because of the institutional review board, right? Like we can't just start interviewing folks randomly without like this plan for their protection, right? You know, in my line of work, it's all under privilege, right? It's because of it's legal, but we can't do that here. But do you have any kind of insight into how to still get that most authentic place or space while adhering to the review board and the standards of the academy?
Yeah, I do. It's actually not all that difficult. We can understand like the ethical codes that are given to us about not insulting people, not going into the field of defamation and slippery slope of getting personal with folks and all of that. But if you are yourself the interviewer, you are as authentic and as unafraid of the consequences, what's going to happen with this interview. I think the interviewer will drop his or her or their. See, I'm kind of like adhering to the new way of speaking about people, so people don't get offended, because that's the kind of stuff you have to worry about, right? So their guard, as it were, and then you probe and you probe, and then not worry about the consequences. So courage, ethics, virtue, like a brushing up on a lesson on ethics, virtue, I think is the best way to prepare oneself prior to an interview or anything. Because when you're authentic, the other person, as hard as they might try to be, you know, to put on a mask or to plug in the narratives that they've used over and over to push the agenda. Like, you know, this happens with job interviews, right? You apply for a job and they come back to you and go, well, you know, it's just you have all the capabilities and all that, and all stuff. Like, you know, it was a great interview. But, you know, we decided to move with another candidate for, you know, and they come up with some bullshit reasons, right? Where the reality is they can't tell you, go, you know, you came to the interview and we needed this person that kind of like looks like us. We needed this person who we imagined we could have a beer with. Those are the real answers. And the other person is like, why don't you give me the fucking real answer? Why does it have to be the professional, you know, a veneer of answers? What are you afraid of? I'm going to sue you, right? That sort of thing. So it's a tight rope, right? So mind you. So the question that Mally is asking, I don't really have an adequate answer, but this is the way I go about it. All right. If you understood anything about my approach, you know, given that we've had, some of you know me from previous experiences, but we've had a few Zoom sessions. I just put it out there, man. And just let things happen the way they need to happen. Sometimes it just blows up, but that's okay, right? Doesn't life happen that way? Right? You're going to an exciting wedding that you've been invited to and all that. You're all dolled up and everything. Boom, flat tire. And then you're on the side of the road, you're changing a tire, and it gets grease all over your fantastic dress and all of that. And then, you know, things change, but you're still going to go to the wedding, right? And the wedding is still going to happen. The sun comes up the next day and all the rest of it, right? So Danny has a comment and a suggestions, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it entirely addresses your concern, Molly, but I think something that I included in my proposal to kind of help mitigate that, because I had the same concern. I didn't want, you know, it to be too crafted. And to Tony's point, I really wanted to dig into the authenticity. I talked about the advantage of using very unstructured interviews as part of my work. And I'm happy to send you like this particular, you know, scholars who I quoted in my proposal to support that. But ultimately, you know, I think allowing the space for it to function as reactive and a conversation is essential for doing that sort of work.
Yeah. David, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just as Danny said, allowing a flow within the interview, I feel brought in more authenticity, and it was confirmed. So from some of my participants, some of their reaction were thank you for asking me to elaborate on that. So for example, I would, in the course of the interview, have a semi-structured question. Well, within that question, or within that answer to that question, the participant came upon this moment from their journey, from their story, if you will. And then I stopped them, and you know, when there was a pause, I stopped them and I said, that was very fascinating. Can we go that way? And they're like, yes, I would love to go that way. And they were very thankful for it. So if, like you said, in a job interview, you know, based on rules for hiring, ethical hiring practices, they must ask the same questions in the same order. But this interview that I conducted, all the interviews that I conducted, started with one question that was written, maybe two, and then went along on its journey. And the participants, I feel, were very thankful for it.
Yeah, I asked
a lot.
Thank you both. I asked that question while already having decided I'm not doing interviews. My platform is podcast as well, but I am doing it in scholarly personal narrative so that I can weave in authentic conversations and voices, but not identify the people and not have it like their voice may come in as, well, I remember when this happened with you and when this happened, but it will never be, this is this person I interviewed and they're on, you know what I mean? It's I opted to do it that way so that I could get around that, what I had become so accustomed to, which is, you know, rolling up on people unannounced, you know, so I opted not to, but I just wanted to know if there were other things that people have done or tried in order to still interview other folks and meet the standards of the Academy.
Yeah, whatever those standards may be, right? From academy from
Well, yeah.
yeah. It varies. And of course, with the scholarly personal narrative, which I'm still really confused about how you approach these. And I'm working with one student who's doing it. It's just, there's a lot of slippery slopes there, right? So you're interviewing the self in that sense with the scholarly personal narrative. And how honest is the self with the self? All right. We lie to ourselves all the time. All the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only, because this is a truth, racial healing, and transformative title or subject about truth as a scholarly personal narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I am talking with other people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I know what we could do, and if it's about truth, then I got to be telling the truth to myself about myself. But that's better heard from someone else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's different than a memoir, because with a memoir, you have you have license to just be creative about your experience, right? Because the marketing people enter the picture. The publishing world is no different than any other business, right? They come and they tell you, well, this is what we want, what people want to hear or read, rather. All right, so bend this story or that story. And if you try to stick to your guns and say, no, this is my story, I'm doing it this way, and I go, well, okay, we're going to nullify the contract, because they stipulate those things in publishing contracts. Anyways, let's move forward. Thank you so much. Who was oh, Ashley? Ashley, we need to hear from you.
What's up, everybody?
Hello.
So where am I at right now? Um, I'm coming off of writing block. I just met with my chair. Well, I talked to Dr. Khan yesterday, just to kind of dust some of this rust off. School year was a little rough for the teens that I serve in Buffalo. And we actually just had another shooting on Friday. A 14-year-old killed a 3-year-old, trying to shoot at another 14-year-old. And there's just been an increase in after-school violence. And so I'm really appreciative in being in this class today. I got a lot of fruitful information. Thank you, Tony. And this is actually full circle for me with how we met in the beginning, talking about poetry, right? And so one of the things I wrote down was that when you said metaphors is a way of talking about the world. And so I'm doing a professional innovation dissertation, and my goal is to offer Buffalo a co-curriculum that is in alignment with Dr. Goldie Muhammad's Hill model. And so she's in support of this work, which I'm greatly appreciative of. And I'm really hopeful that the timeframes align so that way she can be at all of my presentations when that time comes. But my dissertation is going to include a curriculum, but also, as we're talking about authenticity, I'm also building in a guideline for educators called Honest Educational Leadership. And I believe post-COVID, along with all the other tragedies that Buffalo has experienced since the mass shooting, our educators are dealing with an enormous amount of burnout. I think all educators are, but just from where I'm at and what I'm able to see. And so not necessarily focusing on any race, because I'm seeing it across the board and just in the consulting work that I do as an educator. And so as Nina liked to say, real talk HEL, because Honest Educational Leadership is an acronym for HEL. I'm already implementing it at our alternative high school here in Buffalo. And so it's just been challenging going to the schools every day, working with the teens, working with the teachers, and then trying to come home and write about it. So my way of making this a little bit fun for myself and finding that joy of inquiry is incorporating poetry. So my lit review is going to be a traditional lit review, but as I unpack the history of education and why we need a co-curriculum to kind of like advise that leadership as we quote unquote discuss, I'm going to do it in a poetic autoethnography exploration. And so I've also just been appreciative today of hearing all this language about systems. Like these are all the things I'm talking about through my own theory. So Dr. Kashani, you mentioned how systems and organizations at the top, that leadership, right? There's this light level of thinking and intellect. And these are the same people that create these curriculums for our students to learn. And so I want to show through my theory that language functions our systems. And so if we really look at the language that we're using in creating and developing curriculum and unpack it, I think we can incorporate some transformative pedagogy. And so that's where Real Talk comes in with the 9 principles. And I want to create a curriculum, designed to protect our teens and youth, but also to make them feel good and have joy. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. It's a tough one, right? You create a curriculum that is authentic and it allows the openness with one's creativity and thinking philosophically and asking questions and then responding to those questions by way of artistry sometimes, but also intellectually sound. But how does I get past the committees, all right, that to approve this? Say, okay, go ahead and do this. Let's get our kids, thinking and become engaged citizens in the future. Because the larger system at play is not at all interested in engaged citizenry.
Right.
They're very much interested in creating, well-crafted conformists who are good at the specific jobs, they know how to accomplish tasks and so on. And because the people who run societies, I call them idiots. Somebody challenged me on that. Says, no, these are very smart people, but they're just, bad ethics. They don't have the goodness of humanity at heart, and that's why they take advantage of people like, Elon Musk or something. But they are idiots. And here's my argument. Intelligence, if we are to measure, if we use the metric of intelligence for idiocy or alertness and being intellectually sound, we are using intelligence, then we have to accept, I think we have to accept what Howard Gardner introduced to the world of intelligence theory. There's a multitude of intelligences that every human being possesses, right? And he keeps expanding his categories, which I think is a great thing. You can have emotional intelligence, you can have academic intelligence, you can have mathematical intelligence, athletic intelligence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're all familiar with that because you're all educators and you kind of like have touched on these things. People are at the top, policymakers, Ashley, thanks for mentioning that these people are actually creating curricula for our students, for kids. And the kids, no wonder they're always puzzled about, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do all this busy work? Well, the purpose of the busy work, that Chomsky used to always, say, is to filter out those who are like, authentic critical thinking and people, and then don't want to participate, and those who are authentic critical thinking, and they figure out, well, this is how the system operates. I've learned how the system operates. They want me to do that busy work so I can get to the next level and so on and so forth. I'll do it. I'll pretend that this is important work. I'll do it. Now, we see it. I see it in my undergrad students all the time. Like there's some busy work that I'm required to give to them. And I tell them, I apologize for giving you the busy work, but you got to do this because I'll lose my job if you don't, and then you lose your grade if you don't. So how to get past that is the obstacle for you, Ashley. But it's an obstacle that I think you are facing with courage, and I think you must, because look at what these idiots are doing to our world. You talked about the shootings, mass shootings. I mean, think about this. There are more guns in this country than there are people, right? I don't know what the ratio is today. Maybe somebody in this room knows, 2-to-1 or something like that.
I don't know the ratio either, but I do teach it. And there are more guns than people, which is enough, right? It's the ratio being more than that, more guns than people.
Yeah. And there's no end in sight. Every time, I mean, you've got the Supreme Court filled with idiots. What are we gonna do, right? We're in trouble, and so I applaud you, and I am in awe of your commitment to this work. Will you continue the commitment is a question that I can't ask you. You got to ask yourselves. Because, at some point, I've seen this in people just get tired. They're like, fuck this. I'm just want to go and chill. I got another 10 years or so, or, if they're 90 years old, they're like, I don't know if I've got another year, what do I want to do with my life? But there are also people who are in their 90s are still doing the work, you know? I mean, Chomsky is 95 years old. He just had a stroke in Brazil. Did you guys hear about that? And he survived it, right? And I I saw this meme and I grabbed it and shared it on social media. There's a picture of Chomsky because people are sending messages. Oh, he's dead. He died. No, Chomsky's dead. Blah blah. And it says, excuse the language if this offends you. It says, "I'm still here, motherfuckers." Right. So it's a personal choice, right? In many ways, right? To what extent we're committed to this, regardless of the consequences. So this is where the ontological theories of ethics enter the picture and then operate fully. It's like, I am committed. I don't care about the consequences. I'm going to push forward. Yeah. And thank you for pushing forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I've got 12 to 1, David, or 12 guns to 1. That's kind of high. Yeah. But okay. Who do I have next? Thank you, Ashley. Amy, good to see you here. Amy Dene.
I'm here. I'm getting into a better space. It's so good to be here and to hear everyone's processes and the conversation and the research. Yeah, I just got my dissertation defense date set, or not, sorry, that totally wrong. Proposal defense date set, haha, which has been such a struggle. Had a very crisis in December, and completely changed my proposal, my method, and not the topic, but just like how it's going to come out into the world. And I'm still I'm like, oh my God, I have to talk about my dissertation right now. So yeah, still struggling with how to bring it into a product. But working with a professor at University of British Columbia, and he's actually going to interview me around my theory and practices to help organize it into actual dissertation. But my topic is in cultural transformation through decolonial land education, and really looking at healing the harms healing the separations from between ourselves, within ourselves, and specifically between us and land through the facade or the lies of domination culture and settler colonialism. So I came onto this call late, and I heard, Tony, that you asked the question, what do you do first thing in the morning? And so these are the kinds of things I'm working with, is like every morning waking up, and before I do anything else, go outside and greet the day and greet the land and the spirits of the land and all the helpers and guides that are seen and unseen as part of the research process. And like, so it's, in some ways like way out there. And at the same time, as everyone's speaking, the suffering of lands and peoples is beyond, it's like the generations upon generations of trauma and pain is overflowing everywhere. And so there's a fundamental shift in how we relate and how we walk, who we are and what our values, everything everyone's been talking about, that really, from my experience research, is based in this separation of land and of human supremacy, humans being more important than everyone else. So how to bring that into so working with decolonial land education, of dismantling settler colonialism, turning to land as first teacher, and turning to Indigenous leadership. And so working with an Indigenous scholar who he did his research in how Waldorf education can support Indigenous education, and that Waldorf education is, for better or worse, my foundation. So yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get going here this summer, I think. Think that's more than enough to say.
Okay.
Road, a hard one. Yeah, and somebody else said it, but like, so, you know, I feel like so much like of the work of past my entire adult life is around my own healing and how all of our healing is interrelated with that of each other. And yeah, and I'm hearing that from other people too.
Mhm. The scholars that you're in conversation with, are they making references, analogies, between what happened to the Native Americans, the indigenous people to this land, and what has happened to the Palestinians and what is happening to the Palestinians today?
There is no separation. Yeah, yeah.
Is that going to be part of your dissertation?
No.
No. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Capacity here. Yeah. And why not?
Why not? Because I think my like, how do I get this into a dissertation is around land-based early childhood education and transforming the relationship, like working on transformative processes for the educator in relation to the young child on the land where they are at this point in time. So it could easily be translated, of course, to Palestine, to anywhere in the world, but it's going to be deeply rooted in the where I am, which is in the Pacific Northwest Coast Salish lands and waters.
Right. So be working with dispossessed people?
No, working with
On the children? Yeah. Oh,
shifting worldview.
okay. So the children of next generation will have a different relationship with land.
Yeah, hopefully, but I kind of see my work as like won't necessarily see the results in my lifetime. So next generations, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, and starting with the adult, like if adults don't transform, then how can we teach something? If we're not actively in transformation, we are just recreating what we've been brought up in.
Well, I mean, that's a given, isn't it? Look at the history of humanity.
Yeah.
Just blowing shit up. CO2 levels are higher, and the fossil fuel industry is pouring more money into lobbying to continue.
That the pain and suffering and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, valuable work, right? You know, so perhaps, I don't know, 50, 60 years from now, we'll get to that point, maybe even sooner. I don't know, things are moving so fast these days.
No.
It could be sooner. Yeah, it could be in your lifetime. So, you know.
I don't count on it, but
yeah. It's yeah, I was gonna say something about Samuel Beckett's play, the famous play. Danny probably relates to this quite a bit. Danny, you're still here? Yeah.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Waiting for Godot, where in America, I think a lot of people say Godot, do they?
People say Godot, but Beckett's estate says that we should say Godot.
Godot. So it's a play on God. Yeah, perhaps it is. It's the theater of the absurd. How many of you are familiar with Samuel Beckett? It raises their hands. I'm not going to grade you on this stuff. Okay. Everyone should read Beckett. Yeah. But you know, maybe have a shot of whiskey before you start. Thank you so much, Amy. Lee, are you there?
I'm here. So I am currently at the place where I am waiting for IRB approval. Had to make some changes and resubmit last weekend, so I'm just waiting, which is kind of tense because I have time-sensitive things that I need to do during certain programs when I'm trying to collect my data. So I'm nervous that I'm gonna miss out on some data collection because I haven't heard back yet. So just waiting on that. My topic is professional development needs for in educational support for the Waldorf teacher. So I'm looking at what topics do Waldorf teachers need to know more about to be better at their jobs in the area of educational support, rather than choosing just special ed, because I wanted to include trauma in there, but I'm targeting trauma, ADHD, autism, and dyslexia, as well as kind of leaving it open as far as what are other areas that teachers are experiencing challenges with in their classrooms. So,
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Are you coming to Allison Davis's dissertation defense on Monday?
I'm hoping to.
Yeah, okay. Because you know her work. I'm sure you're in conversation with her.
Yeah.
Her work is kind of, connected to your work in some ways. Is this about healing of the educator to be able to heal the learner, and it's a co-relationship and all that. That's fantastic work. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit early in the morning, at least for me anyways, like 7:30 in the morning. I gotta get up, but I'm the dissertation chair, so I have to be there. Which is a whole story in and of itself. That could be
Yes, I've heard parts of that story.
yeah. So,
yeah. So the other thing that I'm in the middle of is I've just scheduled 4 interviews with experts in the field to kind of help triangulate the data that I gather from teachers. So I'm going to gather the teacher data, and then I'm going to meet with experts in the field to kind of get their opinions on the data, what I found with the data, and what they think needs to happen in Waldorf education to help teachers. So I was very excited to have my interviews confirmed.
The challenge of triangulation. It's always challenging. It sounds like you're moving forward, and it's happening. So
yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have Mally, last but not least, of course. All right. Mally, share with us what you have. Enlighten us.
I'm not even in this class, but I had to take pro seminar individually, but I just, kind of co-opted your meeting today.
Dora, you snuck in. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're happy to have you.
So I have submitted my edited or revised proposal to do a scholarly personal narrative around truth, racial healing, and transformation based on my unique experience in learning about South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the ending or the end of the war concerning apartheid and Dutch colonization, and how that has informed my journey here in infusing truth into education. And part of that is telling the story of my unique experience back then and weaving that into having been the initiator of bringing in the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformational Center to Antioch, and Antioch becoming a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformational Center, serving on that advisory board now, and also what that looks like in the future of Antioch. So part of the plan when we applied for to become a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformational Center was to produce podcasts and videos for storying around truth telling of voices that have been historically marginalized. And so my dissertation is proposed to produce and publish the first 5 episodes of the TRHT podcast under the Antioch platform. So that's where I am.
Yeah. I have a question.
I probably don't have an answer, but I would like to hear it.
Maybe it's like, yeah, it's just a curiosity point here. So these podcasts, are they going to be the property of Antioch University, or is this going to be a separate? You have the copyright and the sole ownership of the podcasts?
So the first 5 episodes will be it will be both. It will be joint owned because it is my dissertation. It's the product of my dissertation. But it will be disseminated through the Antioch TRHT platform that I create, if that makes sense. And we're still in conversations about where it goes from there, because the point of it is not to end create the production and creation of episodes ongoing, but my dissertation has to end, right? It has to end at some point. It can't just be every year I'm producing, because it's the plan is to produce 10 episodes a year. It's just that I'm the initial creator of that. And the first 5 of those episodes will be my dissertation. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
or as best as, yeah.
Technically speaking, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes.
I have it's like it's a personal question, and I wonder what you guys think about this. I gather I'm the only person in this room with a Middle Eastern roots. Is that right? Okay. In America, and by America I mean the United States of America, and people like me, who are particularly in the academy, occupy a peculiar space. To white people who are usually in charge, the top, not middle management often, because after all, this is supposed to be all inclusive. We have the all the rest of it. To white people, I am not white, so I'm not one of them. To people of color, interestingly enough, I'm not one of them either. So it's like, it's a funny space. People of color see me as a white guy. White people see me as a person of color. And people like me, particularly if we're in engineering or political science or, medical field, of course, like half of my family is like that. We've been accepted as, the Middle Eastern guy who's a doctor. He's going to be a good doctor. So, but we get marginalized systematically, right? Sometimes it's not even intentional by the individuals who are in charge of, making decisions about people like us. And it's a weird space, and nobody really cares to pay attention to it. By nobody, I mean like people that should be paying attention to these things. So, nobody's written a dissertation on it. There are no books written about this stuff and all of that. We're just these people that are just there, right? And it's interpretive. Some people interpret us as this kind of a person, other people, because, we have different experiences. We have the white person's experience in some spaces. We have the person of color's experience in other spaces and all of that, right? And then it's so does that fall in the realm of the Truth and Reconciliation project that's going to have many, hopefully many more episodes in your podcast?
Yes. So it's interesting. I don't see you as a white guy because I already knew what your background was. So here's a person of color who says, I know you're a person of color. There's that. But that is so when we start talking about truth, right? because the podcast will show that there are requisite understandings before getting to the end of or transformation, right? And so the first part of that is in fact truth. And the truth is we are not, where our racial identity matters more in what the people with power see you as than those without power, right? And even ourselves, right? So bringing that into truth, racial healing, and transformational processes, which is a trademarked particular program by Dr. Gail Christensen. It is all racial identity, historical and current marginalized folks here in the United States. So it is United States specific and about all racial identities and other in the hierarchical system of human value that needs to be dismantled through truth, racial healing, and transformation. So the hierarchy of human value, the casting, applies to all humans, not just the United States very specific construction of Black, white, and so on and so forth.
So it's global.
It's global, but it's a United States perspective that was an evolution of the TRC model, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because it was the first of its kind.
Right.
And now over 40 different nations have applied that model post-war or when trying to democratize a nation, whatever the case is. But Dr. Gail, she chose to consider the United States and how much we don't or haven't told the truth about our racial history, how much we squash the narrative about our racial history that we don't want to identify with, and how now we're so many years out that reconciliation is somewhere else, right? So it's not truth and reconciliation. First, it's truth. Then with that truth, it has to be without fear of punishment, right? That's how we get to racial healing. So the stories, the truth, then the racial healing, and then transformation, right? That's the only way you get to transformation, right? It's through those steps. But reconciliation, that's on somebody else's thing, right? These are the first 3 steps before we can even talk about that. So yes, that was a long way to answer your question. Yes.
Yeah, no, it was a good answer. Very good answer. Thank you so much, Mally, for joining us today as guest speaker. So anyhow, I think wow, it's past 12 o'clock. So you guys are hanging in there. So what does that mean? What does that say? You love to hear.
I was going to say, Dr. Tony, that means that this conversation was so deeply ingrained. And I just thank all of you for just sharing this. This really feels like a very authentic space where we're really sharing, how we really are within what we're really going through in this dissertation process, right? How we are, how we see ourselves, how others see ourselves. Just like as you explained, I just want to say just real quickly that was new information, Dr. Tony, and when you explained how others view or perceive your racial identity. You know, that you said that white people don't see you as being white, you know, so that was something new. But I just want to say that, but I just want to say that this space really allows for us to really come together in community. This is what community, building community, having these ingrained conversations, you know, it helps us, it's helping us as we're getting through our writing processes, as we are making sense of what we are embarking upon, what we are engaging within. So I just thank you, and I just thank everyone. This is very meaningful, very insightful, and very impactful.
Thank you so much, Nina. Anybody else, if you'd like to say some words before we end our session today?
I guess I wanted to kind of piggyback on that type of subject as well, because it's really funny, or not funny, but I kind of ironic how others perceive you as, and trying to find your own space in that society or in that community. And that totally resonated with me, because just growing up, it's like, oh, I'm not Black enough because you're talking white. Why do you talk white? Oh, that's just how I talk, you know, so I wasn't Black enough. My last name's Chavez. I don't speak Spanish, speak a little bit of Spanish. You're not Mexican enough. You're not this enough. So then you kind of stick in this kind of limbo, and you're like, what, who am I as a person? What do I bring to this community? Yeah, it's something you deal with as you grow up.
And it impacts us in pretty much every facet of our lives, whether it's, you know, in our careers or jobs or economic conditions and all that, personal relationships with so-called, you know, friends and acquaintances and even family members and so on. I wish we had like many hours to spend together to talk about these I think absolutely vital topics that need to be opened up. Things like friendship, you know, I've been thinking about that. And what does friendship mean in America versus in other, again, by America, I mean United States, right? In other places. Because, you know, people talk about community, right? What does that mean anymore, right? Like I live in this is a brand new home, right? And then the developer came and built 42 homes, created an HOA, which is a scam in and of itself. And then they call it a community. Well, this is a community we built. Like they artificially invented a community. I know some of the neighbors, and they're really nice people around us, and it's diverse. So I very much appreciate that. But then it's not a community. You know, we don't do stuff together. We don't, like, you know, it's a strange thing, right? So, and that's ultimately what human beings want, right? We want to belong. We want to belong, and that's why we have all these like markers for identities, right? Oh, you're Black, you're white, you're this, you're that, you're male. Oh, you know what? I was just recently told right in my face. I said, well, you know, you're the most qualified candidate for this position. And I knew I was, right? But we couldn't hire you because we needed to fill our diversity needs. So we just gave it to some people that, you know, I'm thinking, holy shit, right? Like, oh, okay. So in this case, I'm a white guy. in the other cases, I'm going to be a person of color, right? It's just, we get, it's the, again, I want to recommend the theater of the absurd, right? Samuel Beckett, right? Absurdity, as Camus said famously, it says, absurdity will slap you in the face at every corner on any given day, and it'll just happen. It might surprise you, right? But everything at its core is totally absurd. Now, I say that and think, oh shit, nihilism. So what does anything even mean anymore? But things mean. Why? Because we ascribe meaning to them. So this whole play, waiting for, thank you, Danny, for that clarification, for got it. But for many years, and I still prefer Godot, right? Waiting for Godot. It's these two guys Vladimir and what is it? Estragon.
Estragon. Yeah.
Estragon, right. Estragon. They're waiting by this tree that has no leaves, right? And different people have done it in different ways. And Danny, I don't know if you've ever done the play, but these two guys are waiting for Godot. All right. Is it God? Is it what? Is it a promise? And they have these conversations. There's sometimes philosophical, sometimes just absolutely absurd, right? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. And the audience who don't have like a knowledge of existential philosophy, they kind of get confused about the play and go, this guy got the Nobel Prize for Literature for this kind of work. It is such a profound play. If you just read the playwright, the actual play, you'll get, it's short, it's very short play. A lot of things will make sense to you. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And what is the meaning of, why is it that some days I wake up and go, what the fuck is going on, all right? What is my life about? All right. There is no meaning. Hey, that's what it's about. There is no meaning. This, don't wait for God. Well, maybe you should wait for God because that's you. We're looking for purpose. That's in my view, you can have different interpretations of the play. In my view, Beckett is saying that, and he never, like, of course, in interviews and so on, never said that this was my intention, that because he knew better. It's about purpose, right? We're in search of purpose. We work towards purpose, and then sometimes we think we have it, right? This is my purpose, and then sometimes that changes, and then at some point in our lives, if you're true to this meaningless of our existence, we recognize that that's okay, right? The moment you reach that point where you say that's okay, then it all, you find the flow. You will recognize the absurdities of the injustices that come your way. It's like, it sucks. You're going to feel bad, but it's there. It always has been there. And it will be there tomorrow too. So you make a choice. This is all choices, right? We assign meaning to our lives. We find purpose in that assignment and so on. I hope this makes sense. But anyways, I just wanted to, I'm glad we had these conversations today here. There's a whole bunch of comments here, and Nina has got a bunch of love marks there. Thank you so much. So thank you for being patient today, hanging in there. I was planning on 1 hour, but here we are, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So I earned my pay today. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was, this just flowed.
Thank you.
It was such a natural and organic conversation. I think when conversations like this happen, you're not focused on time. That's really how I feel. You're not focused on the clock. You're not focused on time, because when certain words, you hear the authenticity, you hear how holistic we are speaking. It draws. I'm an auditory and visual learner, so I'm drawn into these conversations. So yeah, time, it just flowed.